A woman named Jess meets her friend Greg at the dock, but she seems worried. Greg asks why she's upset, and Jess says she's just tired. Greg introduces her to his friends Sally, Donnie, Sally's friend Heather, and Victor. Today they are going to a trip. They board a boat called Triangle. After a while, Jess falls asleep and has a strange dream about being on a beach before waking up. Heather asks how she is, and Jess replies that she had a bad dream, but can't remember the details. Meanwhile, Victor tells Greg that Jess was supposed to bring her son on the trip, but didn't. She claimed her son went to school, but since it's Saturday, schools are closed. Greg suggests that Jess's son might attend a special school. At the same time, a storm arrives and they hear a girl saying she is killing us, but Greg is confused and loses contact with her. They try to escape a storm, but the boat capsizes. Fortunately, they all manage to survive using life jackets and take shelter on the overturned boat, but Heather is missing. After the storm passes, they see a large ship named Aeolus. Jess spots someone on board and calls for help, but the person doesn't assist them. The group boards the ship to search for others, but finds no one. Jess tells Greg she feels like she's been there before, and Greg suggests she's experiencing deja vu. Meanwhile, Victor and Donnie find a photo of another ship with a caption about Greek mythology. Sisyphus, the son of Aeolus, tricked the god of death and avoided his fate 2 times. However, he broke his promise to return, so the god of death cursed him to push a boulder up a mountain for eternity. If you do this, you will always be alive. But every time Sisyphus rolls the stone up the hill, it falls back down again. This cycle continues until Sisyphus understands his mistake. They hear a noise and Victor goes to investigate. He finds Jess's key on the ground, which confuses everyone since Jess is with them. Sally suggests that maybe the key belongs to Heather. They all head to a room to look for Heather, where they find a lot of fresh food. Victor asks Greg for the time, but Greg's watch shows 11:30, while Jess's watch has stopped at 8:17. Jess sees someone again, and Victor goes to follow them, with Jess and Greg following behind. Downey and Sally stay in the room. Jess and Greg hear a noise from another room and find "Go to the theater" written in blood on a mirror. Greg immediately heads for the theater, despite Jess warning him it might be dangerous. Greg doesn't listen and leaves. Jess returns to the room where the fresh food was, but now it's spoiled. Donnie and Sally are gone, so Jess assumes they went after Victor. Then Victor, badly injured, shows up and attacks Jess. She turns his wound against him, injuring Victor further. Jess hears a gunshot and runs to the theater, where she sees Greg has been shot. Sally accuses Jess, saying that Greg told her Jess shot him before he died, and starts fighting with her. Jess insists she didn't shoot Greg. Donnie questions why Jess told them to go to the theater, insisting Greg called them there. Jess is confused and has no idea what's happening. Suddenly, a masked figure shoots both Sally and Donnie and attacks Jess. Jess manages to fight off the attacker and escapes. The killer chases Jess but runs out of bullets. Jess finds a hammer and keeps it for protection. When the killer appears again, Jess attacks and injures them with the hammer. She demands to know who they are, and the killer strangely replies, "Kill everyone. It's the only way to go home," before jumping into the water. Jess soon hears familiar voices. She watches in shock as her group boards the ship again with another version of Jess and starts doing the same things as this Jess did before with her group. Jess is horrified to see these events repeating, causing her to drop her keys as she runs away. She hides and follows Victor, who eventually confronts her. Jess tries to explain everything to Victor, but he doesn't understand. In the confusion, Jess accidentally pushes Victor, causing him to hit his head on a stand and get injured. She runs to a room where she finds papers with the phrase "kill everyone when they are on the boat" written on them. Jess writes the same line on a piece of paper and sees a collection of lockets. She realizes she is stuck in a time loop and that many versions of herself have come before, writing the same line on the papers. Understanding the situation, Jess decides to change the pattern to break the loop and get back to her son. She grabs a gun and sets out to hunt. Now we will call this another Jess, Jess 2. On the way, she encounters Victor and hears Jess 2 approaching, prompting her to go after Jess 2. Victor follows, but Jess can't bring herself to shoot Jess 2, who runs away. Jess tries to help Victor, but he is too injured, eventually dies. Meanwhile, a masked Jess, let us call her Jess 3, who arrived before this Jess, shoots Greg. Jess then goes to the theater and rescues Donnie and Sally, bringing them out of the theater. She believes that by breaking the pattern, she might break the loop. Jess gives Donnie a gun and tells him to shoot anything that approaches. Afterward, Jess follows a trail of blood. Meanwhile, Donnie and Sally feel someone is nearby. Jess hears gunshots, and she finds them. However, Jess 3, disguised in a killer's mask, removes the mask and tells Sally and Donnie to follow her. They do as she says. Jess calls out to Donnie and Sally, but Jess 3 tells them to ignore her. Jess 3 leads them to a room and attacks them with a knife, killing Donnie. Sally manages to escape and reaches the control room, where she sends a radio message warning that she is killing us. Greg hears her call, just as we saw earlier during the storm, completing the loop. Real Jess arrives and Sally runs away, thinking she killed Donnie. Jess follows Sally and is shocked to find a pile of Sally's dead bodies. The pattern Jess thought would break the loop had been tried by previous versions of herself. Jess tries to explain everything to Sally. As Sally dies, the whole group appears on the overturned triangle boat, calling for help. Real Jess realizes that when everyone dies, the loop resets, and the group boards the Aeolus ship again. Jess realizes she must kill everyone like the Jess 3 killer to break the loop. She goes to the bathroom, writes "Go to the theater" in blood on the mirror, and tells Sally and Donnie that Greg called them to the theater. Real Jess then takes a gun and starts her mission to kill everyone. First, Real Jess goes to the theater and shoots Greg. Jess 4 arrives, and Jess shoots Sally and Donnie, just like what happened when she was the new arrival. Jess 4 manages to escape from Real Jess, who chases her, leading to a confrontation between them. Real Jess believes that killing Jess 4 will finally break the loop, but it doesn't work out as planned. Instead, Jess 4 pushes Real Jess into the water. Before falling, Real Jess tells Jess 4 the same line the killer had told her: "Kill everyone. It's the only way to go home." This signals that the loop will restart. Later, Jess wakes up on a beach, the same one she dreamed about while sleeping on the triangle boat. Before we continue forward, here is a flashback scene before Jess goes on a tip with her friends. Jess has a son named Tommy. Tommy is autistic, so while he is getting older, his mental development is not progressing at the same pace. Jess is confronting Tommy, saying, "I am with you, and it is all a bad dream." The next day, as Jess prepares for a boat trip, she finds Tommy's broken toy in the garden. While cleaning up after Tommy spills some paint, the doorbell rings, but no one is there. Jess finishes packing and tells Tommy they need to leave, but he refuses and starts saying strange things. She tries to reassure him, but he still won't go. Angry, she leaves for the trip alone. Now back to current scene. Jess rushes home, where she sees another version of Jess, who hasn't yet gone on the boat trip. Jess is scolding Tommy for leaving his toy in the garden, and then leaves the house. Tommy sees Real Jess, gets startled, and spills some paint, which angers current Jess, leading her to harshly scold Tommy. Real Jess rings the doorbell, prompting current Jess to come outside. Seizing this moment, Real Jess enters the house with a hammer. When current Jess returns inside, Real Jess attacks her with the hammer and kills her. But Tommy sees all this. Real Jess now tries to explain to Tommy and says that this is all a bad dream, which was the same scene happened even before they went on trip. Real Jess puts the body of current Jess in a bag and loads it into the car's trunk. She then takes Tommy to the car. As they drive, a seagull crashes into the windshield. Real Jess stops to bury the bird, but discovers a pile of dead seagulls in the same spot, indicating that many versions of Jess have been there before. This realization frightens her, and she quickly leaves. The blood on the car's windshield scares Tommy, causing Real Jess to lose her temper. Distracted, she crashes into a truck, resulting in a severe accident that kills Tommy and throws the body of current Jess out of the car. Real Jess survives the crash, and a taxi driver arrives, asking if she's okay. She says yes and gets into the taxi. Real Jess directs the taxi to take her back to the harbor, where she initially began the boat trip. The taxi driver tells Real Jess, "I have stopped the meter. Will you come here again?" Real Jess promises that she will. She heads back to the triangle boat, where she finds Victor, who asks why she didn't bring her son. Real Jess replies that he's at school. Greg also arrives, and the scene repeats just as we saw at the beginning of the movie, with Real Jess making an excuse for being tired while feeling afraid. Real Jess boards the triangle again, reuniting with her group as the never-ending loop continues. Jess is trapped in a time loop because she was cruel to her son, and the god of death has created this loop to teach her a lesson. Similar to geek methodology I mentioned earlier in the video, she can only escape by learning from her mistakes. Instead of changing, she keeps repeating the same actions. That's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed the explanation. If you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel to support us.